The Fix is in. The Sports Fix.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Fantasy Jocks. Visit fantasyjocks.com, your fantasy sports superstore. Championship belts, rings, trophies, and more.
Sports Fix listeners, don't wait all day or all week to get in on the fun. The party doesn't stop when we go off the air all week long. The Sports Fix social media sites are your one-stop shop for all things Cleveland sports. Jump over to Facebook.com/TheSportsFix, Facebook.com/TheSportsFix, and become a fan today because we love fans and they create some of the best sports talk in town, Daddy. You'll enjoy talking to your fellow Cleveland sports fans on the Sports Fix fan page. And if Twitter's your thing, well, you know how we do it. Tweet with us at TheSportsFixCLE. It's that simple.
Twitter.com/TheSportsFixCLE, baby.
Chat live with the crew during all your favorite Cleveland sports events, tickets and contests and trivia and so much more. Get with us today, The Sports Fix on social media, Facebook.com/TheSportsFix. Tweet with us at TheSportsFixCLE. Join the Sports Fix on Facebook and Twitter today.
This is Greg Pruitt, formerly of the Cleveland Browns, and you're listening to The Sports Fix.
Live in Ohio, it's time to get your fix. The Sports Fix.
Oh, man, off and running already. Let me get this turned up a little bit here. Welcoming you guys to The Sports Fix. That's right, it is Friday. It was one of those crazy mornings where if you know where I'm at with this, where you look up at the clock and you go, oh man, it's already time to start the show, and I'm doing a million things behind the scenes getting this rolling, but here we are, we're off and running. Another edition of the Sports Fix, Friday edition of the Sports Fix coming your way. We've got a lot to get into. Football previews today, of course, Jeff Gorman from Browns101.com, Ryan Ruiz from Dog Pound Nation with us today as we do the scouting report. Jeff will have the scouting report of the Falcons. Ryan will have his 3 Dawg Bones to victory here. Looking forward to that. Always a great time when both of my men join us here, Ryan Ruiz and Jeff Gorman. Not only that, Jonathan Knight. Hey, unfortunately, the sports writer extraordinaire, Jonathan Knight, not going to join us here today on the show. He'll be back next week, holiday edition of the show. So, sorry about that. He's definitely, I'll tell you what, I'm as sorry as anybody else because JK is one of my favorite parts of the show each and every week. Not that everybody else isn't. I'm just saying JK's my dude, man. And he won't be here with us today, but does not mean that we don't have, as always, a jam-packed edition of the Sports Fix. I had a little bit of things going on there behind the scenes getting on the air, but not anymore. We're rolling. Welcome in, you guys. Let's do this. As I said, a lot to get into. Football, basketball, some NFL stuff. You know what? First segment here. I'm going to get us going and crack this thing open. I don't know how many of you guys have seen the story of Jack Johnson. Wow. I want to talk about that before we get into anything else. Let's do that. Welcome into the Sports Fix. Let's get rocking and rolling. J-Rock, Jerry Myers, that's me, welcoming you in. I am the conductor and the coordinator of this madness here each and every weekday at noon that we call the Sports Fix. You're listening to us live across the Sports Fix Radio Network. Welcome in all of you listening on TuneIn and TuneIn's radio app. How about them Raiders in the chat room there, Charles? Exactly. I know. I'm going to get into that, too, when we start talking some football here in a little bit. Welcome in those of you listening on Spreaker and Mixler and their respective digital applications. Speaking of digital applications, those of you that were listening yesterday, I told you about the phone. It was nuts because I was trying to coordinate the show behind the scenes, and they cut my service off because they put my new phone, and this thing is the humongotron of phones. I will tell you that, man. I'm telling you, it's a little computer on wheels. I was just telling Ryan Ruiz about it before the show, but it will make a lot of the social media stuff that we do with the show even more easier for me to interact with. So very cool stuff on that aspect of it. Welcome in back to it. Everybody listening live across the sportsfix.net, our home base. If it's not there, make sure you bookmark it because it's not only your one-stop shop for all things Sports Fix and Cleveland sports, but it's your place to hear the live feed of the show if you need to. It's your place to catch replays, everything right there. Bookmark it. thesportsfix.net. Welcome in as all those of you, thousands around the world, listening on digital delay on iHeartRadio, the world's largest internet radio provider. Those of you on SoundCloud and Spreaker and Stitcher Radio and CarPlay, and then those of you that download us on iTunes, however you do it, welcome in as always. Doing the Sports Fix thing, not just with us. This is your show every bit as much as it's mine. Phones are open, 216-539-7535. I've got 10 plus minutes or so here before Jeff Gorman joins us. 216-539-7535. Facebook.com/thesportsfix. Tweet with us at the Sports Fix CLE. Shout out, by the way, to Albert in Houston, South Houston, Texas, down there, listening to the show. Thanks for reaching out to us yesterday and letting us know. Like I told you, I'm telling you, I always tell people, I'm like, they're like, well, I listen on delay, so I don't call. I'm like, so what? I'm telling you, that's the whole beauty of what we got here. But he hit us up on Facebook yesterday. Loves listening to the show. Wanted to know if he should play Josh Gordon in fantasy football. I'm like, brother, I don't want to tell you not to. My gut says they're going to go to him early and often, but I can't promise you that. And but we got to talking about that. And speaking of Monday Night Football, how about B.J. Riddell? For those of you that listen to the show, for those of you that were here yesterday, you heard it. B.J. He even put the time on Twitter this morning, 97 minutes and 28 seconds into yesterday's broadcast. He said, if people are deciding between Latavius Murray and Jonas Gray, go with Latavius Murray. I'll tell you what, 4 carries, 100 and some yards, 2 touchdowns before he comes out with the concussion. That's what you get. I'm just saying, when BJ's here, fantasy football for winners every Thursday on the Sports Fix. If you didn't listen, go back to yesterday's show. Whatever you're listening to the show on, it's got the archives. Go back to yesterday's show and listen to it, and then catch BJ here every Thursday for fantasy football for winners. But anyways, that's an aside to all of that. 216-539-7535, 216-539-7535, Facebook.com/thesportsfix. Tweet with us at the Sports Fix CLE. And before we get into football, before we get into any of that, I was curious. Cavs tonight, we'll talk about all of that. But how many of you guys had a chance since yesterday to see the stories coming out of Columbus? First, it was broke by was it Columbus Dispatch down there? And now, starting to really get out there everywhere. Man, the story of Jack Johnson and his family, and, of course, plays for the Columbus Blue Jackets, just recently signed, was it 2 years ago? 7-year, nearly $31 million contract, 2011, so it was a couple of years ago. 7 years, $30.5 million. My man does not have a dime of it to show today. Not only doesn't have a dime to show, but he's got $10 million in future debt already tied up, and it all boils down to his parents. Basically, it's a crazy tale when you unwind this whole thing and you see he had a very respected agent and somebody that was handling his business purposes for a while, and then he broke away from them and put it all onto his parents. They were, and listen, I've done my research here since, I'll tell you, last night when I read this story, I just started, looking up everything I could on this because I knew I wanted to talk about it here today. We talked about, 30 for 30, you see broke, and it's easy to talk about these guys that are out there overspending, overextending, and stuff like that. But this is a completely different situation right here. This is a guy who entrusted his parents to handle him, and they completely betrayed that trust. And of course now he's estranged with his parents right now because of all of this. But I mean, when you look back, he signed, so in 2011 he signs a 7-year $30+ million. I mean, that's the jackpot. That's what you work for. It doesn't matter if it's sports, doesn't matter if it's radio, if it's whatever it is that you do, that's what you shoot for, and he gets paid, man. And you're thinking, not only is he set, but future Johnson generations are set, or at least theoretically, that's the way that should go. I mean, we're talking $30 million, you guys. That is That's not, I mean, look, I know none of the athlete money is a little bit, but I mean, that's different even than, being a guy who played in the league and earned, accrued some pension and made a couple $100,000, and you're able to invest that in the future and all. This is $30+ million. That is a Brinks truck right there. That is life-changing future. Now, like I said, generation-changing money, that is, or it should be, theoretically. Well, anyways, right off the rip, turns out his parents had already borrowed $15 million. $15 million against his future earnings. So already half of that contract was spoken for right there. And not only that, but according to the Columbus Dispatch, they were not the wisest loans either. The ones that were taken out were all high yields, high-end interest rates, all of that, all the bad things that lead to default. And I guess one was there was a mortgage on a house in California that he had no clue he even had in his, he owned. He had no clue that had even taken place. And there was a $3 million loan at 24% interest. And the house had a 12% interest rate. And so what he's already accrued, which at this point is, I believe he's made nearly $18 million of that contract throughout his career, plus what he had made in the first part before he signed the big deal. And all of that gone. He showed bank accounts. I want to pull up the amounts to make sure I get it right, but I do believe that he registered with the court. One account, his savings account was less than it was about $2,200. His checking account, less than $6,500 in his various accounts that he has possession of or whatever. And not only does he not have anything to show for the $18 million that he's already earned, but he's got, obviously, $30-some million. He's got over $10 million still due to him at the end. They're compromised as well because of the debt that's piled up and because of the way it is, and creditors that have claims against him that could be used in bankruptcy filings or anything like that. He's got outstanding. He's got nearly $2 million that he owes there, plus outstanding debt still remaining of over $10 million. Just amazing when you hear about it. Like I said, because it's so easy. Your first instinct is, and mine too, when I first saw the headline, I read it, I'm not going to lie, because it just said Jack Johnson, little left of career earnings. So I'm thinking, wow, this is going to be another one of those stories of a guy who fumbled it away, because I'm not going to lie, judging a book by a cover, my mistake. As soon as I opened that thing up, I started reading it. And here's the thing. A lot of people have this happen. There's a lot of athletes who have been scammed by friends, who have even been scammed by family members. But man, just as a parent, you guys know I talk about my kids all the time on the show, and I always joke about not wanting to be the football dad, not wanting to be all thumb down on the coach and, hey, you do your job, I'll do mine, and whatever. But still, this is there's that trust. I mean, this is parents, and man, that level of trust to be broken because really, I mean, and you listen. Here's the other thing too. There was a good, I wanted to pull it up, a good commentary that I saw on ESPN, and you guys know they're not always my favorite people at all. Scott Burnside though had a good article because he knew the family going way back into the whole the process that gets you to when you make $30.5 million and how close it was. But he brought up statements that were years ago that were made that showed that there was it was a spoken belief amongst the family, the parents, that they were going to be taken care of at the end. Like every time he was making statements, they showed quotes from 2005, from 2006, from various different times earlier in his career, where the first thing he's doing is talking about the only reason I'm here is because my parents got up and drove me first thing in the morning. They gave up their lives. They did this. They did that. That's great because a lot of kids don't appreciate that. But you could almost read between the lines and see a priming of the pump happening right there as they're kind of making sure that he knows, hey, who's buttered the bread that got you here? And then you hear about how they talked him into dumping the financial advisor and the agent, which I'm seeing he may end up back with here as he's now got to try to rebuild himself into some kind of a stable financial situation. But, you know, what do you do when the people that you trust the most in the world come up to you and say, we don't need outsiders. We're just giving away your money. Why pay 10% to that guy? We'll do it. We'll do it for we'll do it for nothing. We'll do it for 5%. We'll do it for whatever, you know, pay the rent at the house, whatever deal you make.